Hello and welcome to Buffoon of the Week. It's a show where we sift through last week's news and current events, looking for people who did or said something so absurdly dumb that we decide that we must share the story with you all. You then get to vote for who you think should win our coveted Scarlet Letter of Stupidity. And the way you do that is by leaving us comments right below this video, or by going to any of our social media platforms and leaving a comment there. After our largest voter turnout to date, you chose New York Governor Andrew Cuomo as Buffoon of the Week. But it was much closer than many people predicted. Honestly, the Drink Tater, as the New York Post has dubbed him, could have been nominated again this week for his continuing war against bar owners in his own state, saying that traditional bar food like chips and wings are not substantial enough to fall under his edict that bars cannot open without serving food. I wonder how the city of Buffalo is taking that insult. My guess is, not very well. Whether you're visiting us for the first time, or if you're a frequent visitor to the show, we want you to know that we release weekly videos on Mondays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So if you like what you see in this or any of our other videos, go ahead and smash that thumbs up button, and please subscribe to the show. 200 subscribers will likely happen this week, so we're going to be releasing something cool when that happens, and we want you to be a part of it. So help us get there. It's just a small click of a button for you, but to us, it means so much more. Every week before we reveal our nominees, we always try to highlight some other buffoons who did their very best to get the recognition of our nominating committee, but they just weren't quite buffoonish enough to hang with the big boys. But they do get to be one of our dishonorable mentions. This week oh god, clowns. Oh wait, that's not a clown. Well, I mean it's a clown, but oh my god, look at this guy. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg was the talk of the internet for the crazy amount of sunscreen he was wearing while taking in some R&R on the open seas. Of course, the internet took care of the rest, launching 1,000 memes. But what they didn't have is this exclusive footage that you won't see anywhere else of Zuckerberg's sick moves. Cesar Romero. No one ever really forgets their first Joker, do they? For even more laughs, we now turn to former ESPN personality and current race baiter Jameel Hill, who took to Twitter to proclaim that if you vote for Donald Trump, then you're a racist. Guess she forgot that the internet is forever, and that back in 2017, she posted that her own mother voted for Trump. Oh my god, that may be the worst Yo Mama joke ever. She called her mother a racist, people! That's sure to make Sunday dinners with the Hills a lot more interesting. Speaking of complete losers, we're back on the Bozo Watch. Here we go again with this guy. Last week, the Bozo quoted the father of everyone's favorite failed ideology, Karl Marx, during his weekly NYC radio address in a discussion on his relationship with the city's business community. Yep, the Bozo went straight up commie. America, you dodged a bullet by not buying into his presidential campaign. Now you know why we call it the People's Republic of New York City. Another example of buffoonish leadership is Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, who last week loudly proclaimed in a live-streamed Zoom conversation that police should no longer respond to reports of rape.
If you're a woman who's been a victim of a sexual assault and the assailant is ran away, wouldn't you rather talk to somebody who is trained in helping you deal with what you're dealing with, as opposed to somebody whose main training is that they know how to use a firearm, right?
Look at the way the other participants are avoiding eye contact with Ellison. A sure sign that even they can't believe the crap he's spewing. And finally, the self-owning of CNN's Don Lemon continued. As always, Lemon wasted no opportunity in trying to once again dunk on President Trump during a conversation with former Buffoon of the Week Chris Cuomo about the president's understanding of a cognitive test that he once took, claiming that it's no big feat to pass such a test. The conversation was hilarious, but not for the reasons that Lemon intended.
So let me say, the person, woman, man, camera, TV. Can you remember that?
Person, woman, man, camera, TV?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That's what we're trying to figure out, because the president talked about his acuity test tonight, and he said he could remember person, woman, man, camera, TV, and no one had ever done that before, because later they came back to him and he was able to answer it again, and so he aced it. It's a, he said it was part of this, the cognitive test when you do the.
No. Well, when do you take that? That looks like something for middle school.
Well, you take that when, usually, listen, I'm not a doctor, and I'm going to let Dr. Reiner explain it in a little bit.
Yeah.
But usually when there is some issue or some concern about, your cognitive abilities. So,
yeah. You're like burying the lead here. What were the animal shapes?
Well, it's a lion, a hippo, and a camel.
Isn't that a rhino in the middle?
A rhino.
You don't even know a hippo from a
Sorry,
rhino. You got no acuity, son. You got no
I'm looking at
acuity.
it backwards.
You don't know a rhino
That's a
from an
rhino.
elephant.
Sorry, yes. I'm looking at it backwards.
What does it mean if you don't know an elephant from a rhino?
An elephant.
What'd you say? A hippo? You thought the rhino was a
I
hippo?
told you I was looking at it backwards. So
what does that mean?
This is how I'm looking at it. You can't really see that.
Just look at Chris Cuomo's face. Even a former Buffoon of the Week can't buy Lemon's line of bull. That beats anything I was ever going to say. But even in the face of all this buffoonery, none could surpass the sheer lack of self-awareness of this week's nominees. Portland, Oregon Mayor Ted Wheeler and Florida Congressman Ted Yoho. Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. When you think of loony progressive cities, the big ones come to mind. But lately, the capital of crazy has been Portland, Oregon, home to our first nominee, Mayor Ted Wheeler. Last week, President Trump ordered federal agents be sent to Portland to protect federal property after weeks of protests, violence, and vandalism had overwhelmed the city whose leaders had done very little to quell unrest. In response, the left became apoplectic with claims of secret police and unmarked vans, including a story in New York Magazine which was accompanied by this photo clearly displaying both the coded ID protecting the agent's identity against reprisals towards him and his family, as well as his unit. Yeah, alright, unidentified my ass. Amidst the hysteria, Ted Wheeler decided to go out among the protesters in an apparent sign of solidarity. The reaction from protesters was not a warm embrace. Later that night, Portland police declared the protest was a riot. And not a funny one like this show. Okay, I'll stop. As you can see, flares and other incendiaries were shot over a fence towards the federal courthouse, and after 7 use of force warnings, 7 of them, folks, federal agents had to use tear gas to disperse a riot scene outside of the federal courthouse, and Wheeler was among those gassed. His reaction was maybe one of the most tone-deaf things you will ever hear.
I can tell you with 100% honesty, I saw nothing that provoked this response. It's nasty stuff. I'm not afraid, but I am pissed off.
What are you pissed about?
This is a egregious overreaction on the part of the federal officers. There was nothing that I saw anybody do that warranted this reaction. And all it's doing, as you can see, it hasn't stopped the stuff. So they fired munitions, they fired tear gas. All it's done is piss everybody off even more. It's made people angry. They've come in and they've clicked a hornet's nest. Sure. This is not a de-escalation strategy. This is flat out urban warfare. And it's being brought on the people of this country by the President of the United States. And it's got to stop now.
You know, folks, there's lack of self-awareness, and then there's just plain willful ignorance. Wheeler and his ilk would apparently rather watch their city burn than admit the truth. That their plan of appeasing out-of-control protests became the fuel for the fires that have left his city looking like this. Wheeler would rather be on the record as a man of the people than a man that serves the people. All the people. Clearly, the protesters wanted nothing to do with him, yet he panders to them at the expense of law-abiding citizens who don't ask for much, like a safe city. This is a prime example of oblivious buffoonery, the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil mentality that has taken over urban America. Hey, don't forget that Buffoon of the Week is all over social media, so when you're online, make sure you like us on Facebook, you follow us on the Twitters, and go on over to Instagram and like us there too. But the most important thing you have to do is remember to subscribe right here on YouTube. Okay guys, this one might be a little controversial for some of you, and you're gonna flip out, but please just hear us out, okay? Our next nominee is Florida Congressman Ted Yoho. Last week, Yoho decided he was going to give Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez a piece of his mind concerning her comments that the increase in violence in the People's Republic of New York City was directly tied to poverty. I mean, come on guys, it can't be progressive policies, right?
So why is this uptick in crime happening? Well, let's think about it. Do we think this has to do with the fact that there's record unemployment in the United States right now? The fact that people are at a level of economic desperation that we have not seen since the Great Recession? Maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent and are scared to pay their rent. And so they go out and they need to feed their child and they don't have money. So you maybe have to, they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night.
Okay, so now here's where it gets dicey. According to a reporter who overheard the exchange between Ocasio-Cortez and Yoho, Yoho used a few $5 words that, we probably shouldn't share here. But the upshot of it was that when Yoho walked away, he allegedly called AOC an effing B. Never one to let controversy go to waste, AOC immediately played the victim card.
I was walking up the steps of the Capitol when Representative Yoho suddenly turned a corner, and he was accompanied by Representative Roger Williams, and accosted me on the steps right here in front of our nation's Capitol. I was minding my own business, walking up the steps, and Representative Yoho put his finger in my face. He called me disgusting. He called me crazy. He called me out of my mind. And he called me dangerous. And then he took a few more steps, and after I had recognized his comments as rude, he walked away and said, "I'm rude. You're calling me rude." I took a few steps ahead, and I walked inside and cast my vote. I walked back out, and there were reporters in the front of the Capitol. And in front of reporters, Representative Yoho called me, and I quote, "a fucking bitch."
For his part, Yoho denied the allegations, but did offer an apology.
I was coming down from voting up from the Capitol as I walk across, as I always do. And I was coming up, she was coming up the stairs, and I asked her, I says, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And she goes, "Yes." And we've never had a conversation before. And I wanted to ask her about this policy that she was telling people it was okay to shoplift if you were hungry. And it went backwards from there. Everything was directed at policy. When she told me that, yes, she thought it was right for people to go ahead and shoplift if you're hungry, I said, seriously, with as many social programs and faith-based programs and all these other and food kitchens around, the best that you can do is to offer people in your district to go ahead and shoplift while you're calling at the same time to defund the police. I said, those are just absolutely the most frickin' crazy policy ideas I've ever had. And I said, your policy ideas are disgusting. And I turned around and walked away. I walked down the steps and I said, this is just such frickin' BS. And that's all I said. And then a reporter came up to me and said, what was that about? I said, no comment. Did you say this? I said, no comment. And I left.
I rise to apologize for the abrupt manner of the conversation I had with my colleague from New York. It is true that we disagree on policies and visions for America, but that does not mean we should be disrespectful. Having been married for 45 years with 2 daughters, I'm very cognizant of my language. The offensive name-calling words attributed to me by the press were never spoken to my colleagues, and if they were construed that way, I apologize for their misunderstanding.
Okay, so now here's where we come in. Yoho's buffoonery is not in the he said, she said of the argument itself. It's in the way that people like Yoho approach AOC. Let's be clear, AOC lives rent-free in a lot of people's heads, including apparently Yoho. So the fact that he got riled up enough to at her in public on Capitol Hill with the press around is a pretty buffoonish move. Whether you believe Yoho said what he said, or whether AOC is lying, or if she's telling the truth, that's all up to you. But to us, Yoho's loss of temper in full view of the press gave a heat magnet like AOC the opportunity to play the victim. And whether you agree with Yoho or not, whether you support him or not, you have to admit that those actions are pretty buffoonish. So there you go, folks. We just served up 2 fresh buffoons for your consideration. Who do you think wins this week? Tell us right now who you got for this week's Buffoon of the Week. Okay, so since you stayed till the end, here's a little secret. BuffoonoftheWeek.com is a reality. Go check it out right now, but don't tell anybody else. Please subscribe to the channel. We really need your support, and we need you to come back next week where we'll have 2 more nominees, but only one can be Buffoon of the Week.